Satish laid the foundation for engaging with the gospel. How do we understand the gospel? Satish and I have this running joke that whenever Satish preaches, I'm not there. I'm either doing Sunday school or I'm out of station and things like that. So, but last week I said, "Oh, you're leaving now." Okay, Satish is leaving now as a revenge for me. But last week I was very excited to come here, but unfortunately that morning, both Sasha and Leah were not well, and then something happened. I could not attend. And I messaged, I was looking forward to it. I had messaged Satish right in the beginning saying, I'm very excited. This time there's no Sunday school. I get to be there. I get to listen to you. And then this happened. But then he's like, what to do, brother? The world is working against us, But I did listen to your sermon on YouTube, Satish. I even told that story of the pig, Percy the pig, to my daughter. So even she knows the story of Percy the pig. And one of the things that we want to do, and the vision that Uncle Arun has along with the other church leaders, is that by the end of this, so we are having one session today, and then at church camp, we'll be doing one more session on culture, and then we'll go back to Ephesians. But one of the visions that Uncle Arun has along with the other leaders is that ultimately at the end of this sermon series, we all should have a desire to understand that God has called us to our particular cultures. Whichever culture that we are put in, we are God's, Jesus' hands and feet in that culture. And by the end of the sermon series, if we are able to instill that idea, if we are able to instill the idea that, yes, God, you have called us here, that the church is a going out church, it's a sending out church, and you have placed us here in your wisdom in order to be your light in this place. If we are able to get that thought or that importance and get started on that journey, then in one sense, this series would have done what it's supposed to do, right? And so it's a beautiful vision, Uncle Arun, and I feel it's so amazing that our church is embarking on this. A lot of churches tend to be inward looking, all right, look within, grow within, and the fact that we as a church have the opportunity to do this, to have a vision like this and to carry that forward, I feel it's great, and I pray that God will bless this effort and that we will be able to continue with it. Right, so the topic that Josh has given me, Josh was kind of creating the roster for this, is this understanding, engaging, and appreciating culture. All right, so that's something that I do as a vocation also, looking into culture. And so this is the topic that is there: understanding, engaging, and appreciating culture. And I thought the 3 points can be these 3 words itself. So first, looking into understanding, we can spend a few minutes there looking at how we can understand culture, how we can look at these events and then process it in our mind. What would be some ways to do that? Second is to engage with it, and then third is to appreciate it. All right, so I would use this as 3 points, and then we can go from there. All right. Hey, it was working till now. Great. All right. So first thing, in terms of understanding culture, how do we understand culture? All right. That's the first thing. In order to do anything, first we need to be able to understand it. What would be one way of understanding culture? I want to take one of the biggest cultural phenomenon of our time, all right, from October 7th onwards, this huge cultural phenomenon that is happening around us, all right, the Israel and Hamas, Israel-Palestine issue. And one thing that I found very interesting was that how do you know about this issue? It's through the news, right? Through different aspects of the news, different images. But you would see the story changing based on which news channel that you are watching. So if you watch more far-right news, whether it's Fox News or Republic TV or, Aaj Tak or those kind of far-right news channels across the world at any point, all right, if you read any far-right news channels, it's very pro-Israel, all right, it's very pro-Israel. Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel can do this. Hamas should be destroyed. So far-right news channels will always have that narrative, that Israel is the one that is being attacked and they have the right to defend itself. So all images are shown in that way. The story is carved in that way. And so that is all your far-right news channels. Then you have other news channels like, say, for example, Al Jazeera. Okay, Al Jazeera is an Arabic channel, particularly from Qatar. And if you listen to Al Jazeera, they have a very different view on it. After all, they are an Arabic news channel, and it's particularly for the Middle East. And theirs will always be a look into Palestine. what has happened to Palestine. Okay, Hamas is a terrorist group, but look at what devastation that it is causing for all the children and all the people that is there in Palestine. It's in one sense very bringing out a Palestinian issue. That is the narrative. So the pictures will be on Palestinian children. The pictures will be on Palestinian refugees running. All right. So here is an event that is happening, but one news channel is giving one particular perspective that is there, showing pictures and then crafting stories in that area. Here is another news channel which is crafting stories in this area, and those are two ends. Then you have more left news channels, like the Quint, the Wire, Guardian. These are all left news channels, and they all look at historical causes. Go back all the way to 1948, when Israel was formed, and the injustice which was done at that point in time. And because of the injustice, this is the Palestinian retaliation for it. So always step back and look at historical causes. We have no skin in the game. This is the historical reason why it is, and then try to kind of navigate that situation. So here you have an event. It's an objective event that is happening here. But the stories that are told, how this is reported, is based on different perspectives. And I'm sure each one here will also have their perspective on it, based on what they are reading, based on what they know, will have a particular perspective on it. There won't be a consensus of it. And that is one thing about culture. One of the things about culture and engaging with culture is that ultimately what we'll each have is different perspectives based on a number of things, based on our upbringing, based on knowledge that we have, based on the news that we consume. Each one of us, I'm sure if I give you a page and say write about the Israel-Palestine issue, none of yours will be perfectly matching. There might be certain resonances where one group will tend towards this side, one group will tend towards this side, but no one's will be exactly corresponding. Because one of the things about engaging with culture is that you will ultimately have perspectives on this particular issue, which is very different for other things. Say if I were to look at this height of this pulpit stand, this thing, okay, this pulpit, let's call it, okay, this stand, lectern. Wow, we have a grammar Nazi here. Lectern. Okay. Now, how do we understand the height of this lectern? Okay. We can't say, I feel like the height is, 6.5 feet. It's my perspective. There is no perspective here. All right. You take a measuring tape and you take it from here all the way to the bottom. All your perspectives are destroyed. There's an objective reality here to which we all must conform to. Right? And you could see that if I ask for your age, you can't give a perspective. My perspective is that there's no perspective here. There is a date of birth and you calculate it. There is no perspective. If I ask for the location of this place, where is New Front, where is Bridge Church, there is no perspective. I can't say I think it's in Koramangala. These kind of objective events have a factual basis. But whenever it comes to culture, it is always reading the facts. It is always us as human beings interacting with these facts. And very interestingly, what we have in the pages of the Bible is that the Bible itself is written as perspectives of events that are happening during its time. During its time, what were the events that was happening, and how did the Israelites, the author, the narrator, and that community look at these events and interpret the events? That is the way in which the Bible itself has been formed, which in one sense is very interesting, of a way in which God is revealed, and very different from other texts. If you look at Eastern religious texts, it's either myths, so you have the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, so it's mythical, or it's high philosophy, the Vedas and Upanishads. It's not reading events and seeing the hand of God behind it. Okay, the way in which it's composed is very different. Okay, say what Quran is poetry. All right, it's a poetic way of talking about what Muhammad said. But the Bible, as a perspective, is looking into the events that are happening, whether it's the flood. So here is an event that is happening, a cataclysmic flood, and they are looking at this event and trying to say, why did this flood happen? What are the reasons behind it? What are we supposed to understand, and what does it reveal about God? And you would see that throughout when they are in Egypt, and that's a picture of the plagues in Egypt. On one end, if you're reporting, it could just be, cattle are dying, people are dying, people are getting boils, agriculture is devastated. But it's not. What the Israelites are saying, no, there is God's hand that is there behind. These are not just events. These are not just random things happening. They're God's, if there are events that are happening, and Yahweh is behind it. All right. So even with their king, okay, during the time of judges and king, and finally in the life of Jesus Christ, looking at that reality that is happening, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and trying to interpret it. So very interestingly, what we see in the Bible is also the way in which God is revealed, the way in which it comes out is through perspectives. Different people, especially this community of this community of the Israelites, the community of the Jews, looking at events and trying to understand it. But here's the thing with understanding culture. There are two things, okay, two specific things that the Bible brings out that I want to show. Yes. Okay. Ah, correct. Correct. One of the things what Uncle Arun was saying, could you explain this word culture? You know, what we really mean by this. See, like lectern, you know, it's very easy to explain what it is. You know, one of the things that we want to do in camp, church camp, and maybe this can be an advertisement for church camp, all right? Because one of the things that we want to do in church camp, we have a longer session, okay, kind of really break down that word, okay. But just to give something right now, because Uncle Arun has, you know, paused this sermon and asked me to explain this, you know, let me just explain it. It has culture. Different types of culture, all right. So it can be your family culture, so things that are happening in your family, that is a culture. It could be your corporate environment, that is your culture, some things that are happening there. It could be your work environment and things that are happening there. So culture is very difficult to describe because it is in the atmosphere we are living and breathing. It's very ingrained in it, all right. And so maybe let's be okay with some sort of ambiguity for now, all right. Let's be open to some sort of ambiguity, and let's just bring together all our understanding of what we understand here. Especially right now, we are talking about a macro culture, okay, macro geopolitical, little more macro. Once we go to engaging, I'll go into a little more specific of it. Is that okay, Uncle Arun? Does that answer your question? All right. So Bible as perspective is kind of looking into these events that are happening around, and reading into that and giving a particular perspective. Now, two things to understand about the Bible in terms of understanding events. The first thing, and I want you to keep this in your mind. Are you guys clicking it there, or I'm clicking it here on, you know, it's working from here. All right, great. All right. So the first thing is that how did the Israelites read culture, read what is happening to them, happening to themselves and the world around? They always rooted it based on their history and covenant with their God Yahweh. So anything that happens is always based on God has made a promise with us as his people. He has made a promise to Abraham. All right, he has chosen us as his covenant people. And so whatever happens in this world will be read within that lens, within that rubric. They're not reading culture from any other perspective, say from an Assyrian perspective, or just from a secular perspective. You know, oh, okay, this newspaper said it, okay, this is what it says, or this is the news that I'm hearing. They always read their culture, events that are happening based on their history and covenant with Yahweh. That what is the cause of suffering in this world? It's human sin laid out in the story of Adam and Eve. And so if there is something wrong in this world, it does not mean God is bad. It's because of human sin. So always underlying reading of culture is their history and covenant with God. And that is something we need to be able to keep in mind. That what does it mean for us when we look at culture? Are we just going to read perspectives and read news? Well, there is something here. We base it on our history and our covenant with God. Who are we as Christians? What is our covenant? What does the Bible say about God? And how do we understand this event? Secondly, the Israelites never read culture or read events, whether it's happening in Babylon or Assyria, just for some general knowledge, you know, just so that men can sit around and drink chai and eat some chips and then do some high talk, you know. That is not the reason why the Israelites are looking into culture. It's always to see what is the practical relevance for their life. How does this event connect to us as a nation and us as individuals, and what should we change? It could be very macro events that are happening around, but their call is almost to be able to apply what does it mean for us and how can we change? What does it mean for us and how can we change? And underlying any event is these two what canvases these two framework for reading. First, what is our history? Okay, what is God's covenant promises to us? And second is what is the practical relevance for us? And so always move towards practicability. How do we change ourselves? What is it revealing about God, and how do we change ourselves? All right. And so these two need to be there when we are reading different events. I just want to give one perspective on this, and this is not the word of God. Each one of us are free to give a perspective, and you can disagree with me. Maybe after the sermon, you can feel free to disagree with me, ask a question, say, okay, Jacob, I don't agree with this point, but this is a particular perspective. Just to give you an example, okay, it's not a thing, it's just to give you an example of how you could do it in your own situation. Now, just to bring back the Israel-Palestine issue, one of the things in our history and our covenant that we have made, particularly with what the New Testament has said, is that in the life of Jesus Christ, what Jesus is saying in John chapter 2 is, destroy this temple and I will rebuild it in 3 days. All right. And what Paul is going to say is the definition of Israel is going to be redefined in the Messiah. That the safety and security for Israel as a nation is not land, is not their king, neither is it their temple. It is Jesus himself. There is a move away from our understanding of land as safety and security, which the Israelites really believed, because in Egypt that was what was promised to them. A move away from that to Jesus as the one in whom now God is revealing the new Israel. That all those who now belong to Jesus, okay, it does not matter whether you are in Bangalore, in Karnataka, having this land, or what your other ethnic identity is, none of those matter. Your safety and security does not lie on the land or the temple of Israel. Jesus now is the new Israel and the new temple. And it is that Paul is trying to move to and trying to point towards. Now, you could reject that. But what the Bible says is, but whenever you reject that and try to create your own safety and security, whether it's your land or bank account or whatever it is, you will always do it at your own peril. They will always be, you will do it at your own peril. You will get it, And if you look at the history of Israel, they became a nation, 1940, 2,000 years later, they become a nation. They come back and they become the nation, And even if you ask a secular historian, they would be very, they would have to see there is something great, something miraculous that's happening here, surrounded by enemies, surrounded by Arabic countries, yet they're able to thrive as a nation. And in one sense, it could be given. Could be given. If we force our way to, if we want our safety and security, that could be given. A person in a corporate office trying to work his way up the ladder, it could be given to him. But it will always be at your own peril. There will always be destruction and devastation that is there. And that's something that we need to look at. The second thing that we need to look at, particularly in this situation, is what does Hamas want to do? Okay, Hamas is a terrorist organization. And every terrorist organization, one of the things that a terrorist organization wants to do is to create fear, is to create panic. That's what you want to do. And the aim of Hamas, the ideology of Hamas is they do not want peace to exist. They do not want Israel to exist. That is the idea. There are other people in Palestine who want a two-state solution, right? But Hamas does not want any peace to exist. That is their goal. It's almost what when the thief comes to steal and destroy. I do not want any peace to exist. One of the things that Netanyahu is doing is making economic ties with other Arabic nations, so with Lebanon, with Saudi Arabia. And so he's, in one sense, shrewdly making economic ties, because when you make economic ties with other nations, you create avenues for peace. You can't deal with the Palestine issue because it's too hot. So let me deal with other Arabic nations, other Middle Eastern nations. And there is a possibility of peace in the horizon. There's a possibility that some sort of truce is going to come. And one of the things that Hamas wants to absolutely destroy is that they would come, they would destroy. And one of the things that terrorist organizations look for is response. They want a response. Okay, they want to provoke a response. They would come and do something, and you would be pushed to respond. And when you respond, they have won. One of the things that you see in the newspapers is Palestinian children dying, a whole group, millions of people being thrown away from their houses. And just the optics of it, when people around the world, imagine we as Christians are looking at other Christians around the world who are refugees, it would stir our heart. It would create something that is there, And so what it does is, annihilate possibilities of peace. Imagine the Palestinian, imagine children in Gaza. You think they are not going to forget what happened? Their fathers and mothers crying, running out of their house. It's going to be a trauma that's going to last for hundreds of years. And so one of the things that the devil tries to do is to destroy all possibilities of peace. And that's something that we need to be able to understand. You know, one of the things in Ephesians, what Paul says is we moved away from the flesh to the spirit. And it's a very natural thing to do. It's very easy for me here to sit and say these things when, if somebody were to attack my house and do something to my children or my family, I'm not going to look at historical causes or social, economic inequality. That's why this fellow did like this. My thing is to respond, is to fight back, is to do everything that I can to protect. So there's a justification here, but it's still ultimately creating a world which does not have peace. And if we move in that direction, the world of the flesh, of trying to create a security on land or any other issue, will ultimately lead to that. All right. So that is on a macro issue that is there. But it just gives some pointers to whenever we look at any issue, we should be able to look at what does it mean for us. For me, it will be what does it mean to understand this in my family? What does it mean for me to not respond in the flesh, even though it attacks my family? It's something very close to me. How do I respond to it? It's always to move towards some amount of practical relevance. All right. So that is in terms of understanding culture. Now let's go to engaging with culture. All right. So this is some framework for understanding culture. Let's look at engaging with culture. Another interesting thing that you see in the Bible is that there are different levels to culture, and maybe this kind of touches what you are talking about. The best way to kind of clarify that word is to give examples, I guess, to give definitions as much as possible, to give examples. So here you have the life of Abraham, and actually the life of Abraham is the culture of one person. God is choosing one person, Abraham, and he's calling him out. Of course, it's connected to his family and things like that, but primarily it's the call to one person and his life and his culture and everything that's attached to him. The story of Ruth and Naomi is a definition or looking into a family culture, a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and that dynamics that is there in this culture. It is like bringing it to very basic level, something we are all familiar with. We might not be connected with geopolitical issues, but each one of us is connected to family issues and family culture. And the Bible brings that in, looking at it. Then there are much more larger national issues, whether it's with the judges or the kings, it's national. Then there is international issues, whether it's Babylon, exile in Babylon, Assyria, Persia, Rome, and how you are able to look at it. And so it is looking at that culture. And finally, in the death and resurrection, it's cosmic. John says in the beginning there's a cosmic understanding of the world beyond what you can touch and see and feel. And so what the Bible brings out is that there are different levels to culture. And our call would be to understand, God, what is the culture to which you have called me? What is my battle zone? Where am I called to battle with? And this could change from person to person. But it's very important that we define, God, what is it? What is my culture? What have I been called to do? And they could be a primary, they could be secondary, work culture, battling with the things that are there in work could be a secondary calling or a primary calling. That is up to us, and maybe that's something that we can look more in detail during church camp. But it's each one of us to say, what is the culture to which, God, you are calling me, and how should I engage with this particular culture? What is my calling? How do I engage with this? One of the things that I do in my work is to particularly look at pop culture. So movies, music, what are the themes that are coming out of this thing? Why are people attracted to this movie? What is the theme that is coming out of it? How can I respond as a Christian to this? And that's my wife is very clear with what her boundaries are, what is her boundaries and what she needs to be able to tackle. And so each one of us need to be able to understand what is their culture. And in one sense, the macro and the micro play itself together. The Bible is giving a revelation of God, something transcendent, but it manifests itself in your lives, in the individual things that you are doing, all right? Different levels of culture. But here is one thing that the Bible kind of helps us. What is the basis of engaging with culture? And the answer is healing. This has been talked about by Satish. This has been talked about by Uncle Arun. I feel all four of us are talking about the same thing, just with different PowerPoints and different slides and pictures that is there. But the idea is the same. I was trying to look through all the videos that all three of you were preaching and saying, okay, you've already mentioned this, so maybe I don't have to mention it. But if that's the case, then I won't have much of a sermon left, because we've all said a lot of things, and it's good to overlap. That means we are reinforcing something, that we are called to bring healing in the world. Why should we engage with culture? Because God has called us to bring healing into this world. Whichever culture that we are in, we are called to what Satish and Uncle Arun were saying, to be salt and light, to bring healing. If that is not the thing, if your a reason for doing it is some sort of just intellectual stimulation or just to engage, just to understand, then you're not doing it as a Christian. The call for a Christian is, why should you understand and engage in culture? Because you want to bring healing. You want to be able to bring healing into that particular place. And this ties in with appreciating culture also, the engaging and appreciating part. Because one of the things, especially for Christians, what can stop us from engaging with culture is actually disgust. Okay, yuck, I don't want to deal with this, because there's things of this world are just too much. Josh and I last week, we went for a stand-up comedy show, and then just sitting there, one of the things that really irked me was, he went into very vulgar jokes, like very perverse, so unnecessary, and my immediate reaction is, yuck, okay, why is he saying this? Why is he doing it? Now, I found that reaction very interesting, because one is, I used to be exactly like that in college, all right? So I don't know why I'm feeling all irky now that I'm not in that phase, I've changed. Now I'm feeling all irky about it, all right? So it is this, and I also think there's so many things in my life, in my private life, that if this secular person were to see, he would be disgusted. I have no authority or no basis to be so disgusted with what he is saying. There is what I do not have the latitude to do that. But it's also saying something. Okay, why do we feel disgusted about something? Because it's not right. We feel this one because it's not right. Okay, there is something sociologically also, that's something that does not bring human flourishing. We irk at it. There is something, because inside us is, yes, this thing that this does not bring human flourishing. It's not a good thing. Even with the stand-up comedian, I feel it's not good for him to do such vulgar jokes. First of all, the crowd is not laughing because of it, but he feels that he has to do it in order to make the crowd laugh. But my response to it shouldn't be disgust at him at what he's doing. It's just, this is not right. What he's doing is not right. And if I had a relationship with him, if I had some sort of a friendship with him or an opportunity, I should be able to speak about that to him, to be able to bring that about to him, not to feel disgusted by it. If we are called by God, all right, and which each one of us have seen, to bring healing in the world, then we cannot be like, say we have some dermatology issue, okay, some skin rash, and we go to a doctor, and the doctor looks like, yuck, vomit, I don't want to look at it. If the doctor does that, then there is no healing that is there. There is no healing that can come about. The doctor should look at it. Yes, this is a problem in the skin, but the skin can be redeemed. The skin can be changed. And this world that we are living in is broken. Culture as a whole is broken. And whenever you as a Christian step into a particular place, the Holy Spirit will push your heart to see certain cracks that are there in culture. You won't appreciate, you won't say, wow, this is so awesome. No doctor does that also. All right. But the way in which a doctor would look at a particular skin rash would be very different from somebody else who wants to criticize it or kind of shun the other person. Our calling to engage with culture is to understand, God, you have placed us here to bring healing. That is who you have placed. You have got into the muck of my sin, all right. All my past and history and everything that I am and continue to do, you have been able to get into there and redeem me. If you are able to do that, then that is what I will do here. Yes, there are certain things here which are not right. You don't appreciate it, but you see it for what it is, and you see in what way you can bring healing. How do you bring healing into this particular place? Your engagement should always have the level of healing. Okay? Because it starts with this notion that, sorry, maybe the image is a little throwing off, but the idea is that culture can be redeemed. Culture is made by God. That ultimately, this world is a good world. That is a basic theological condition that the Bible puts in the beginning. That God made this world and He proclaimed it good. Israelites always looked at that history and said, this world is a good world. A lot of other philosophies at that time were saying the world is entirely corrupt. In some way it is to destroy, it's to annihilate this world, move away from this world. The Bible starts with saying this world is a good world. But because of human choices, there is corruption. But God has given something. God has placed some people that is there. Since we are doing since we are doing our study on Ephesians, in Ephesians 1, what I found very interesting doing that, that inductive study is one of the things that Paul says throughout in Ephesians is that ultimately when you are a Christian, you are in Him. You are in Him, and your inheritance is in God. You have an inheritance. Not after you die, all right, but the minute you accept Jesus, you enter into that inheritance of God. Which means that your value and your inheritance is not coming from culture, is not coming from the things that are there in culture. A secular person gets his value and his inheritance from culture, that he has no transcendent reference point to get anything. But a Christian gets his value and his inheritance not from culture, but something beyond, which places him as the best position to redeem culture. Because your stakes are not here. This is not your hope. This is not your value, and your thing is not based on what value your corporate office gives you. That is not your place. Your inheritance lies in God, which makes you a best position, or puts you in the best position to redeem culture. Just want to end with one story and then one particular verse and then bring this to a close. Growing up, when I entered into engineering, there was this one person at the back. He has got 4 yearbacks and things like that. He was there at the back. And then a few months later, I go and sit with him, and suddenly I find this guy really fascinating. He's making calls. He was a gambler. He was a poker player. All right. And so I found his life very fascinating. I'm like, I think he's making calls, he's making deals that is there. Class is going on. You're supposed to be listening, and here is something else that is happening. And I'm very fascinated by it. Maybe there's something in my heart also which kind of pulled me into this thing. And so I was like with him, and then I became friends with him. And my thing is, I'll help him study and I'll help him pass. And what he did is he introduced me into this whole world of gambling. Okay, suddenly you're an engineer, you're catching a flight, you're going to a thing, you're finishing a game. So I found that life very exciting for a particular period of time. But slowly over time, what I was able to see is the whole culture so we were a group of friends. There were 5 of us who became very thick during that time. All right, so we used to go, and there's just this very illusory life that is there, going and doing this, and life has to be very fast, sitting and listening to lectures is too boring, something, you always need something, there was always some stimulants to make life very fast. And there was this whole culture that was going on. But over time, I was able to understand that this culture that is there, even though I was not like so close to God, I always loved Christ in my heart. But at that point in time, what I was able to see is that there is something very blood-sucking about it. Everyone in this group is talking about themselves, how much money they made, where they went, what game they played, how they made the other person a fool, And even among us, it's always boasting, So this person is saying, I made this much, I made this much, I made this much. And 2 years into it, I was just so stuck in it, So I felt like I had to play, then I go into debt, and then that's the thing, then I have to steal something. It's just one whole miserable life. But at that point in time, it's just, this is the life, this is the culture that is there, all right? And so this whole thing is happening, and then I was able to come out of it, but thanks to my dad and thanks to what Christ did, I was able to come out of it. And by 4th year, I told them that I'm joining seminary. So 4th year, I go and told them I'm joining seminary. They were not fazed by it. They were like, oh, this is just some temporary phase that you are going through. It's okay, you can go do your thing, you'll come back to this world. Slowly, you'll ultimately come back to this world. And so I went, I wasn't in touch with them. And then I joined seminary, I got into RZIM, I got married to Sitara, and we were expecting one kid. And then I got a message from them on Instagram saying these guys are meeting together. Okay, these guys, 5 of them, they're meeting together, and they want me also to come and meet them. There was this place in Marthahalli we used to all meet. So we are meeting there, things like that. And it was a lot of pressure on me, not because I wanted to meet them, because now they know I am a I'm into ministry. They don't know what it is. They think I'm some achin or some priest or something like that. So they have this image of me, and I'm wondering, how do I go back to them? How do I go back to them? What do I say? They'll have this thing about me. Should I go? Should I not go? And finally, what I had in my heart is, I should go. I should go. These are my friends. I had a really nice time with them. They were my friends. I had a nice time with them. I'm going to go. Right? I'm going to go, and I'm just going to be God. I'm just going to be myself. I did enjoy my time with them. Yes, it wasn't. There were wrong things that I did. I need to apologize for. It's not a life I want to live now. All right. But I have a lot of value for them. They were my friends. And so I go there, and I meet this. I meet this group of people that is there. And again they are back into their own boasting, talking about the countries they have been to, things that they have done. I had nothing of that to say. I had no stories like that to say. But the stories that I had is about my marriage, about expecting a child, about my studies in theology, about things that I've learned from the Bible. And slowly I'm realizing I'm very much the center of the conversation. All of them are listening to me as though I'm saying something very fascinating. Okay, I'm saying something completely different. I never even thought, and and I never even thought that they would want to listen to me in it. But all of them are very curious in what it is. How is it being married? I said, it's great, man. Marriage is great. You should try it out. There's a thing. This is what it is. Oh, I think, what did you learn? What did you feel? And suddenly there's this whole fascination that is here. And in this story, at that point in time, I didn't want to boast about myself. One thing, I have nothing to boast about. That's there. I wanted to appreciate them. These friends of mine, they were horrible in engineering, but they were very good businessmen. One guy started a bakery, he started 4 bakeries, he was able to do something. So I affirmed him. I'm like, you're so good at business. You have this skill that is there. And for the first time, he is affirmed. He is changed. And one of the things that I understood there is, here is this culture. It is the exact same culture when I was in college. 7 years or 8 years later, nothing has changed about. It's the exact same culture within friends. But one thing has changed. I have changed. I have changed. I know what it means to be loved by God. And because I have changed and I can enter into it, there is a possibility of redemption in this culture. In this, there is a small possibility of redemption, not because there's some major transformation here, because I have changed. And because God has given me life, I can enter into a culture and redeem them. They are amazing friends of mine. They have beautiful gifts. They have a type of street smartness that I can never even begin to grasp or understand. My life has been very academic and things like that. And so very fascinated by these people who have a very strong street smart sense. And I wanted to affirm that. I didn't want to be a big guy here. I didn't want, because I get that value from God. But I can give something into this culture. And then that culture can be redeemed. I want to end with this verse, all right? And this is from Ephesians 2, and I think Uncle Arun alluded to this. It says, we are God, His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. And the word there for workmanship is poime, autugar ek poime. Poime is works of art. What Christ says is, you are God's work of art. And when you enter into it, you bring God's work of art into that particular culture. And it can be redeemed. Because you are there. Because you step into a place with Christ in your heart. Then, just like how God can redeem this world, you with Christ in your heart can redeem that particular culture that you enter into. Right? Thank you. God bless this word.